Hello and welcome back. Now that you're here, we can go over the newest chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen. In honor of reaching 100 subs, I'd like to test the waters by discussing the new chapters, so we can make this channel a community for theories and speculation, in addition to considering underrated characters. So I'd like to invite you to leave your thoughts and theories in the comments. On Twitter or in the comments, I remember saying that I'd make a tier list of all the Jujutsu Kaisen characters at 500 subs, so you can look forward to that a lot sooner than I expected. But without further ado, let's get into it. The chapter begins with Toto revealing the strange object under the bandages on his left arm. It is a vibra slap, which is a strange instrument made to imitate the noise cavemen made when they used animal jawbones as instruments. But for the purposes of this fight, the only thing that you need to know about it is that it vibrates and hits itself several times at once, thus fulfilling the conditions of Boogie Woogie due to a binding vow Toto has made. Now, Toto can only use Boogie Woogie with the vibra slap due to a binding vow, which can allegedly clap 50 times in 1 second. But in return, his range is incredibly enhanced, and the number of targets is also expanded, to be enough to save seemingly everyone from the last chapter's domain except for Yuji and Choso. Yuji and Toto begin to outplay Sukuna by disorienting him with their attacks from several angles. They both throw objects to swap with and operate in perfect sync to overwhelm Sukuna. He even states that Toto is the most difficult sorcerer to sway and that this is the worst possible time for him to appear. Every offensive move that Sukuna attempts is negated by Toto's extreme perception and attunement to his technique, always shifting Sukuna to the worst possible position just when he's about to attack or defend, allowing Yuji to always be attacking Sukuna from his blind spots. Sukuna realizes that Toto can somehow adjust the tempo of the vibra slap to create a roulette effect, constantly making Sukuna guess if the number of swaps will be anywhere from 1 to 50 at once. This means that Toto could reposition any number of the Jujutsu sorcerers from a long distance back into the fight as long as Mei-Mei's crows are around. Or he could even switch the crows into Sukuna's blind spot for a bird strike that he specifically avoided having to block or dodge several chapters ago. Sukuna considers these conditions impossible to adapt to, but due to the soul resonance mentioned in the last chapter, Sukuna is able to perfectly read when Yuji is most focused and views a pattern where Yuji's focus will peak whenever Toto is about to swap. Sukuna is still wary of a feint, and as Toto activates his technique, he moves to attack Yuji, but is instead shocked to see Toto's swap didn't affect either of them and instead summoned one of Mei-Mei's birds. This shock gave Yuji the perfect chance to land a decisive blow, which turns out to be his 8th Black Flash of the day. Toto baited Sukuna by swapping in a bird and then doing nothing with the bird, Sukuna, or Yuji at all, thus hiding Yuji's attack within 3 layers of tricks like a fighting game professional. As Yuji lands his Black Flash, he gouges his claw into Sukuna's chest, causing blood to spill from his mouth. As Sukuna feels cornered, he begins to form the hand sign for another domain expansion, despite his worsening brain condition and the fact that he needs to pay the price of several binding vows to accomplish a domain at this point. But before he could cast his domain, something strange catches his eye, causing him to completely shift his focus away from Yuji, who is currently ripping his chest apart, to see the silhouette of the strongest ghost with unmistakable eyes. And the chapter ends with the appearance of what seems to be Satoru Gojo, back from the dead. I'm going to quickly give my opinion on the events and then conclude after a small amount of speculation. First, I really like the creative solution to Toto losing his arm. Instead of simply having Yuta or Shoko heal his hand, Gege took the opportunity to make him even more unique. And this gives the reader a plausible explanation for how he didn't really participate in the culling games. Because mastering the Vibra Slap must have been hard, and the Binding Vow most likely needed to be very complex to allow this massive of a power increase. He essentially traded away a technique that he considered dead to be able to use it more than 50 times better if you consider the added range and variance. So the nature of Binding Vows would lead you to believe that it was an incredibly difficult adjustment for Toto to make to get his understanding of this new technique to this level. From a meta perspective, it was certainly necessary to power Toto up a little bit. I'm interested to see what the fight will look like when even more allies appear to have Boogie Woogie target them all at once. The fight scenes are always interesting to watch when Boogie Woogie is in play, and this chapter is no different. And Yuji hitting a Black Flash is a great reference to their first battle together as brothers. And finally, the appearance of what seems to be Gojo is going to be a massive shock to the fan base and reignite a wave of memes and interest in the series. But I honestly believe it's something something of a fake out. The others don't seem to react to his presence, and Sukuna has talked to people who are already dead before. From a narrative perspective, I think Gojo's return would be far too easy for the sorcerers, as Sukuna already seems to be cornered. I believe there are a large number of possible explanations, such as illusions or omens, but I personally believe that this is signifying Sukuna sensing the presence of a new Six Eyes user. In chapter 145, Tengen explains that Kenjaku had tried to fight the Six Eyes head-on and lost, which resulted in him killing the next Six Eyes in Star Plasma Vessel the month they were born. But nonetheless, he is bound to them by fate, so on the day of merging, they both appeared, and Kenjaku concluded that there was no way to get rid of the Six Eyes, and that he had to seal them to win. And this is further evidenced by the fact that Kenjaku confidently told Kashimo that Sukuna was the strongest, but still told Sukuna to fulfill his promise before fighting Gojo. It is clear that Kenjaku didn't think Gojo would win, especially when you see his reaction just before he fights Takaba, but he was still wary of their fight because he knew another Six Eyes user would emerge as an unpredictable threat. And now that Yuki Tsukumo and Gojo are both dead, the Vessel and Six Eyes are bound to return. And I don't want to get too far into theory crafting or speculation, but I think Nobara would be a perfect candidate for the Vessel, considering how difficult it would be to work her into the narrative otherwise. And if I had to speculate about the next Six Eyes wielder, it would either be an entirely new character, Yuta, or Miwa. The first two options are relatively obvious, so I'll explain my reasoning for Miwa. First, there are early scenes of Miwa and Gojo interacting where it's very clear that she's a fan of him. And later on, in a Jujutsu stroll, Gojo confirms that Miwa is his type. This itself doesn't really mean anything, but it signals intent that from the early stages of the show, Gege wanted to make a connection between them. She also has a really ominous showing in the Sendai colony to foreshadow the future events. Gege decided to dedicate more than a full chapter to showing us what high-level new shadow style looks like with Kusakabe. She was able to protect Maki from Sukuna's domain, and of course the narrative irony of the useless Miwa becoming the strongest would be a subversive decision that Gege is known to make. Gege also likes writing powerful women when he has the chance. In conclusion, this chapter was very strong from beginning to end, and the uncertainty of the final page is bound to spark theories and curiosity for the entire week leading to the next chapter. So it's hard to want much more from this chapter, but it is very clearly setting up something that overshadows itself, so it's hard to be more excited about Toto than the return of the Six Eyes. So it slightly detracts from the chapter itself, similarly to how the last chapter introduces Toto to overshadow the death of Choso. For this reason, I'd rate it at a 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching. I'm really interested to see what you think will happen in the next chapter, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on my speculation and your own opinions and comments. But either way, I hope you stay safe and take it easy.